Weekdays at 12 p.m. GMT, 5:30 p.m. IST.
You don't know how to fix the holes in our ozone layer. You don't know how to bring the salmon back up a dead stream. You don't know how to bring back an animal now extinct. And you can't bring back the forest that once...
Hello and welcome and thanks for tuning in. You're watching Gravitas with me, Priyanka Sharma. Here's what's coming up on the show tonight. Who remembers Frankenstein's monster? Literature students would be raising their hands right about now. It was a monster created by a disillusioned, guilt-ridden man. He was determined to destroy the fruits of his own scientific endeavor. He wanted to gain godlike power, and he creates a monster who goes out of hands eventually, wreaking havoc. Have you seen the state of Pakistan lately? It's a mix of chaos, instability and terror. And today I want to focus on the dreaded outfit which is responsible for this terror, the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, or the TTP. Here's what has unfolded. One police officer and two suspected militants were killed in a suicide attack. Authorities have now issued a red alert in the capital, and to no one's surprise, the TTP has claimed responsibility for this attack. Stay with us tonight on Gravitas. We'll tell you why this terror outfit is akin to Frankenstein's monster. And Frankenstein in this case is the failed state of Pakistan. Also on the show, we continue our coverage of the Wuhan virus. We tell you what's happening in China. Shanghai is staring at least 25 million cases. So tonight I want to ask, is China running out of life-saving medicines? And the season of strikes is the least of the UK's problems currently. For many, the stay-at-home advisory brings back haunting memories of a lockdown. And now, a new advisory to wear masks is also back. So how will the elderly spend Christmas this year? Locked indoors or with family? The Christmas Grinch is back. That's me. I'll tell you why divorce rates are spiking globally over the holidays especially. What are couples arguing about? We'll decode tonight and, of course, spread some Christmas cheer as well, all coming up tonight on the show. Our cover story tonight is about Pakistan, a well-known sanctuary and exporter of terrorism in its neighborhood. Has the preeminent guardian of suicide missions now become a suicide state? Are the voracious terrorist demons it created now eating their own maker? The biggest of these radical terrorist forces with a theological, ideological agenda is now the Tehreek-e-Taliban, in short TTP, or the Pakistani Taliban. It was created by the ISI at the heart of Pakistan's deep state to help the Afghan Taliban headquartered in Quetta and known as the Quetta Shura to capture Kabul. That mission was achieved back in 2021. Now the TTP has adopted a new objective: to take over Pakistan and turn it into a Talibani state. Look at what just happened this afternoon. TTP terror reached Pakistan's capital. There was a suicide blast in Islamabad. It claimed the life of one policeman, injured 4 other security officials, along with 2 civilians. Let me get you more details now. Where did this blast unfold? In Islamabad's I-10 sector located in the southwest. The sector borders Rawalpindi, which is the headquarters of the Pakistan Army, and home to the Afghan Taliban's Rawalpindi Shura. Now, reports say the blast occurred when a suicide bomber exploded himself at a checkpoint. He was traveling in a taxi with a woman. When he was stopped by the security officials, he pulled the plug. Listen to this statement now from Islamabad's police chief.
At around 10:15 a.m., the police spotted a suspicious car. It was a taxi with a man and woman seated inside. The Islamabad Police's Eagle Squad intercepted them and, believing that they looked suspicious, started a body search. During the body search, the young man, who had long hair, went back to the car and blew himself up. The terrorists were killed on the spot. 1 policeman was martyred and 3 or 4 policemen were injured. They have been shifted to hospital and are being treated. I believe the policemen have saved Islamabad from heavy losses through their bravery and presence of mind.
Just minutes after this statement, the TTP claimed responsibility for the attack. It acknowledged its role in the blast, saying the attack was carried to avenge the killing of its senior leader, a certain Abdul Wali. He was apparently killed in a roadside bombing in August this year. Now here's the thing. The TTP has neither been shy about its objectives nor hidden them. Last year, on the 10th of December to be precise, it called off its shaky truce with Islamabad. We reported on it. First, it seems inconceivable that a Pakistani government should sign a ceasefire truce with terrorists. That is precisely what happened. That is precisely what the Pakistan Army did when Imran Khan was Prime Minister. Now it was the TTP which called off the truce. It then issued a 2-word message to its followers: be ready. For what exactly? This the TTP did not publicize, although its terrorist brigade got the message as clearly as the authorities. You see, it doesn't take a genius to understand what they meant. This was a warning for Islamabad to brace itself for more trouble, more unrest, more violence, and more terror attacks. In the last 12 months, the group has carried out a series of deadly attacks against the Pakistani state and the people opposed to its ideology. On the 6th of February this year, TTP terrorists killed 5 Pakistani soldiers. They're said to have fired on them from across the Durand line. And then, on February 22nd, the TTP claimed responsibility for a grenade attack on a police post in Peshawar. Take a look. Now, as I was saying, in this attack, at least 4 policemen were killed. And then on the 23rd of March, TTP terrorists carried out an attack in North Waziristan. It claimed the lives of 4 Pakistani soldiers. And then on the 10th of October, a day after the 10th anniversary of the shooting, of Malala Yousafzai, unidentified armed men opened fire on a van carrying schoolgirls. 2 students were injured. This attack unfolded in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Swat Valley. And all evidence indicated that it was the TTP that was behind it. And last month, the TTP killed 6 Pakistani policemen in the country's northwest region. I have some numbers for you now. In 2022, Pakistan witnessed a 51% rise in terror attack, 5-1. There were at least 250 attacks this year, which killed more than 433 people and injured at least 719. Most of these attacks have been attributed to the TTP. Just look at these numbers now. That's not all. Last year, the TTP released a video. It showed the Tehreek's chief, Noor Wali Mehsood, visiting the northern zone. An undisclosed location in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, it showed him addressing scores of TTP supporters as a dozen armed men stood behind him. Do you know what he told the gathering? He said the TTP is not a separate organization, but it is in fact a branch of the Afghan Taliban. What does that mean? It means that the group is part of the new Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, and that is something that it had long denied. For decades, the TTP had called itself a separate and distinct outfit, not a Taliban offshoot. Nobody believed them, so it decided to drop the pretense altogether. Listen to this now.
تحریک طالبان پاکستان داد امارت اسلامی شاخته دغی چتره یو حسادو تحریک طالبان پاکستان داد امارت اسلامی شاخته دغی چتره یو حسادو تحریک طالبان پاکستان.
What does this tell you? That the TTP has become a septic thorn in Pakistan's flesh, spreading the poison of chaos and the fear of destabilization. The phrase Frankenstein's monster is well known. Dr. Frankenstein created a monster which turned on its maker. That is what is happening now. The TTP is turning on its very creators. Let me give you a bit of context here. Back in 1989, when the Soviet troops left Afghanistan, the Pakistan army reorganized the Pashtun tribes who fought them into fighting a force in northwestern Pakistan. They called this force the Army of Mujahideen. Many in this army later went on to join the Taliban, and later, when the Americans invaded Afghanistan, Pakistan turned against the very group it had created and positioned itself as a West ally in the war on terror. A host of these Pashtun tribes, which Pakistan had trained, gradually turned against the military and formed the Tehreek-e-Taliban, aka the Pakistani Taliban. And since then, the TTP has waged a brutal guerrilla war in Pakistan. It is in direct control of vast swathes of territory in the northwest region, in the northwest frontier region of Pakistan, out of the reach of the Pak army. And now it wants more territory, more legitimacy. The return of the Afghan Taliban next door has come as a booster shot for the TTP's ambitions. The group has found a new life and perhaps new weaponry to take on the Pakistani state. The recent spate of attacks, including the one on Islamabad today, only proves that it's a classic case of chickens coming home to roost. The question is, can Pakistan fight the TTP back? Will it be able to survive the coming storm? The many attacks the TTP has promised, it's only a matter of time before we find out. And since we're speaking of monsters, how can we not discuss the Wuhan virus? It's a story that we've covered over the last few days. A monster some say China have created, and a monster that is now humiliating its alleged creator. And I use that word with caution, humiliating. Because the Wuhan virus has created a shortage of medicines in China, and I'm not saying this, China's own state media is. Look at this headline. The Global Times carried it 2 days back. It says Chinese pharmaceutical firms are operating at their full capacity to address cold medicine shortage. Yes, forget vaccines, forget COVID-19 pills. China doesn't even have the basic medicines for a common cold. Medicines like ibuprofen and Panadol, they're all running short on supplies. Why? because Chinese citizens are hoarding them. Millions of them are desperate to get their hands on antiviral drugs as COVID infections in the country outpace the existing supplies. Naturally, this has caught China's hospitals, clinics and pharmacies completely off guard. You see, they were unprepared for the onslaught of demand and gave little to no notice about stockpiling them. There was no heads up, no preparation. Their shelves have now gone empty. The people of China have found a solution even for this problem. Instead of going to the pharmacies directly, they're directly going to the factories that produce these pharmaceuticals. Take a look at this video on your screens now. It tells the complete story. It's from Zhuhai. It shows Chinese citizens rushing to a medicine factory to buy ibuprofen. Soon enough, even these factories might disappoint them. Here's why. Chinese authorities have taken over medical supplies production too. Yes, China has requisitioned all medical supplies production. In other words, it has issued an official order laying claim to the use of medicines. Take a look. What this basically means is that the regime's officials are tapping pharmaceutical firms and securing supplies for the state. In a nutshell, if a Chinese citizen wants more medicines, he or she will have to ask the state for them, at least in some parts of the country. Here's what the report further says. More than 11 of 42 test kit makers in China have had their products seized by the state. The state has also seized parts of their production. This includes WION Biotech, a rapid antigen test maker. It says all its kits have been requisitioned by the local government in Beijing. Authorities have sent additional staff to 6 manufacturers of antigen tests to help them increase production. Now, this is humiliating to say the least. A mighty regime like China, which aspires to be a global leader, which is trying to seize territories in the South China Sea, which is flexing its muscles in the Asia Pacific, which wants to take control of this century, is struggling with basic medicines back at home. This is the scale of the shortage. Now, that worried Chinese nationals living overseas, especially in Singapore, are standing in queues to send Panadol to their families back home. According to one report, Chinese living in Singapore were seen lining up outside the office of a company which specializes in courier services to China. And something similar is happening in Thailand. The shortage of medicines in China has sparked a buying frenzy there. Chinese nationals living in Bangkok are hoarding them by the hundreds and sending them back to their families. This has forced many pharmacy owners to limit supplies. Listen in.
We have a lot of buyers for paracetamol, including foreigners and Chinese customers. But the most obvious are Chinese. They would grab as much as they can. Suppose if we have 20 boxes in stock, Chinese customers would come and ask, how much do we have in total? If we say 20, they will take all 20. But we have to limit the number of purchases.
It's truly a sorry state of affairs, and the reports coming from China indicate that things are not going to improve anytime soon. Take this one, for instance. It says hospitals in Shanghai have warnings of a tragic battle, a battle that could see half of the city's 25 million people getting infected by the next week. Now, that's around 12.5 million infections in just 7 days. One hospital in Shanghai said on Wednesday that there are already an estimated 5.43 million cases in the city. And this is what the hospital said in a statement. Allow me to quote. In this tragic battle, the entire greater Shanghai will fall. All the staff of the hospital will be infected. Families will be infected. Our patients will all be infected. We have no choice and we cannot escape. If that's not a dire warning, I don't know what is. No choice, no escape. I'm assuming these two sentences aptly sum up the crisis in China, not just in Shanghai, but all over the mainland. Right, moving on now. In recent years, cryptocurrency has gained mainstream acceptance. It has made investors billionaires or bankrupt overnight. But it has also become a hub of money laundering. Cryptocurrency is no longer seen as an option, but a standard part of the money laundering tool. And now it is fueling the war in Ukraine. What do I mean by that? Australia's Financial Intelligence Agency has issued a rather grave warning. It has found that Russian paramilitary groups are seeking cryptocurrency donations. And this is happening on social media with no censorship or scrutiny. Russian forces are using the money to buy weapons, drones, and more armor as the war rages on. They have even posted the pictures on social media platforms. Now, this may not come as a surprise because cryptocurrency has all the ingredients to promote illicit transactions. Let me tell you how. The computer-run digital asset functions outside established financial institutions, be it a bank or government. It sidesteps the need for financial middlemen and allows users to do business directly with each other. But this lack of scrutiny and unchecked freedom has done more harm than good. In July, the global consultancy firm Chainalysis found that nearly $2.2 million have been sent to Russian military groups. It's important to note at this point that every penny matters in a war zone. Even small sums can buy weapons and result in fatal attacks. And here we are talking about millions. Just imagine how big of an impact that can make. Cryptocurrency has made it happen effortlessly. That's the big concern. Some Australians have even funded terrorist organizations, including the Al-Qaeda and the ISIS. This just shows you how easy it is to use crypto as a fundraising source. And when you add social media to the mix, the results could be astounding. Governments have long overlooked the regulation, and the oversight is now more prominent than ever. Criminals are not hesitating to use regulated crypto ATMs for money laundering. Vulnerable people put large amounts of cash into these ATMs, which is immediately then sent offshore. And as of now, 10 digital currency exchanges are operating crypto ATMs in Australia, and this number is growing quicker than you can imagine. Now let me explain how crypto ATMs work and how they are fueling more money laundering. These machines allow you to buy cryptocurrencies using cash or debit cards. You simply need to generate a QR code, make the payment, and it will be added to your crypto wallet. The ease of transaction is being abused by criminals. These crypto cooks hunt for victims. They generate QR codes linked to their own crypto wallets and then force the victims to make the payment. The lack of verification and relative anonymity has made it very difficult and rather even convenient for some fraudsters. The UK's Financial Conduct Authority made a smart move earlier this year. It ordered all Bitcoin ATMs to be shut down due to concerns about background checks. But the number is growing at an alarming rate in the United States. More than 26,000 such machines stand today. They can be found at every other convenience store, be it Walmart or Circle K. And not just these ATMs, the crypto market in general has been a hub of all kinds of crimes ever since it rose to popularity. The currency has been used for drug trafficking, embezzlement and whatnot. Take the popular case of Sam Bankman-Fried, or SBF. The American entrepreneur and investor was one of the biggest winners of the crypto boom. His crypto exchange FTX won millions in investments. Money flowed in from well-respected venture capital firms and even pension funds. But as the market crashed, SBF went from riches to rags. And after great scrutiny, he has now been charged of epic fraud. He's awaiting trial for conspiracy and money laundering. Federal prosecutors accuse him of using customer funds for personal investments. He has allegedly made political contributions and used the fund to repay billions in loans. And that's just one of the many cases of crypto crime. Cyber criminals use crypto to launder a staggering, listen to this figure, $8.6 billion in 2021. This was up by 30% when compared to 2020. Money laundering is always the same process at its core. It's about turning illicitly obtained money into money that appears to be legally obtained. But the vectors keep changing with time. And right now, cryptocurrency is a hot commodity for money launderers. And this can be blamed on a lack of regulatory guidance. Those who are in power are not taking the required action. Frauds are happening under their noses. Terrorist organizations are being funded. Russian forces are being armed. And they are letting the criminals get away with it. It has been more than 300 days now, 302 to be precise and counting. Europe's deadliest conflict since the Second World War has created havoc. It has also seemed remorseless and interminable. Thousands have lost their lives, millions have lost their livelihoods. It has thrown the world into economic chaos and uncertainty with rising energy prices. And now, suddenly, after months of escalation, there's a change in narrative from Moscow, with matching, if less audible, signals from Washington. Listen in.
Our goal is not to wind down this war, this conflict, but on the contrary, to end this war. We are striving for this and we will continue to strive for this. So we will seek to make sure that it all ends, and the sooner the better, of course. As for what happens, I've said it many times, intensifications of military actions will lead to unjustified losses.
This is what the Russian president has said as his Ukrainian and American counterparts meet in Washington. I'd like to draw your attention now to two things from Putin's statement. One, for the first known time in public, Vladimir Putin has called the fighting in Ukraine a war. For the first time, he has publicly deviated from his carefully crafted description of Moscow's invasion as a special military operation. Second, the statement is a rare show of intent from Moscow that it is not talking of de-escalation, but of an end to this war. So is an end finally in sight as we wrap up 2022? To many of us, the Russian president's statement may seem out of the blue, but let me tell you it is not. It comes after several rounds of below-the-radar negotiations between generals, spy chiefs and diplomats of America and Russia, of course. Authorities of the highest levels from both sides have held talks, not once, but several times. In October, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin held a series of calls with his Russian counterpart, Sergei Shoigu. They discussed the situation in Ukraine. In November, CIA Chief William Burns met his Russian counterpart, Sergei Naryshkin. And this was in Ankara. Mind you, the intelligence chiefs cannot be holding this meeting without permission from the principals. So the signaling, especially in the last quarter of the year, has been very clear. Last month, even top US General Mark Milley sounded a warning bell for Ukraine. He said, Ukraine cannot completely defeat Russia. He called Ukraine's declared war objective of kicking out Russia out of all its territory unrealistic. Meanwhile, Ukraine's President Zelensky got his message from the White House when he met with US President Joe Biden in Washington. It is now evident that this was the real reason for Zelensky's sudden visit to the US. He was feted as a hero in public and told to get realistic in private. He got the Patriot missiles and dollops of aid that he had been craving for, but the price was not sent in dollars. The price was a geostrategic commitment that he would cooperate in the wind-down. Saner minds have realized that the war can go out of control. Ukraine had already begun hitting targets in Russia. And a sharper Russian response could always lead to unintended consequences. We've seen that firsthand in the war. On the ground, Moscow has taken the Russian-dominated East. The splendid Ukrainian response has proved that it cannot get more. It cannot get clearer. At the start of the conflict, Moscow certainly wanted a regime change in Kyiv, but it cannot hope for a pro-Russian government in Kyiv anymore. It has already announced the annexation of 4 separatist-held regions and controls the coastal corridor from Crimea to the Russian border. A subdued Putin seems ready to settle on a new frontier that is less than his ambitions desired. Putin's latest remark also signals that the big boys, Washington and Moscow, have more or less arrived at the coordinates of a potential deal. And if they have, where is the problem now? The problem lies in Ukraine. You see, Zelensky has put forward a 10-point agenda for talks, but 2 points could create serious obstacles. The implementation of the UN Charter and his demand for the withdrawal of Russian troops. Zelensky has just said that he wants a just peace, but in a war, one side's meat is another side's poison. His definition of justice is unlikely to tally with Putin.
Для нас, для всіх, мир For all of us, peace, just peace is different. For me as a president, just peace is not compromises as to the sovereignty, freedom and territorial integrity of my country. The payback for all the damages inflicted by Russian aggression.
So, can America impose its will on Ukraine in the interests of the larger good? Even if pictures and videos from the recent Washington meet may show Biden and Zelensky in a rather happy place, do also remember the time when Biden lost his cool while on phone with Zelensky back in June. You remember that? The Ukrainian president reportedly asked for more military aid, and Biden reportedly lost his temper, raised his voice and said, "Show a little more gratitude." That statement sums up the relationship between the two. Remember, Western allies are now struggling to supply weapons to Ukraine. Kyiv's unlimited appetite for free weapons has burdened and strained Western stockpile. We've been telling you about the West's dilemma as well. Whether to supply Ukraine with more weapons that it is currently demanding, or to take a rather wary look at the US and NATO's diminished stockpiles. While peace talks do not guarantee that there will be peace on the ground, for this war to end, there has to be a deal, a peace deal. While Joe Biden has now become the final arbitrator and arbiter, peace can be more complex than war. But we, on Gravitas, will be right there with you, bringing you more clarity from the fog of war and the thick mist of peace. Right, let's move on now. As the festive cheer peaks in the United States, so has the snow. Flights are being cancelled. Travel plans of thousands of Americans have been disrupted. The eastern and central parts of the country are facing a threat of a bomb cyclone. Millions of people have been put under weather alerts due to the crippling impacts of the storm. The storm can soon morph into a cyclone. Our next report gets you all the details.
American airports have come to a halt ahead of the busiest travel days of the year. At least 2,200 flights have been cancelled and nearly 7,000 others have been delayed as an Arctic blast surges from west to east. Travel and utilities disruptions have dampened down holiday cheer for the Americans and for thousands of tourists who rush to the US to celebrate Christmas.
I've been here at the airport for 4 hours, and I stayed in line for like 3 hours. It's been pretty crazy.
Just to rebook. We don't know what's going to happen, whether or not they have extra flights for tonight, or they're saying maybe they won't even have flights tomorrow. So it's Christmas, it sucks.
U.S. forecasters have issued alerts, prompting the residents of eastern and central parts of the crippling threats of the storm. Millions of people are expected to be affected by it. President Joe Biden has also issued a warning. Listen in.
It's not like a snow day, when you're a kid. This is serious stuff. And my team is prepared to help communities weather this, no pun intended, this storm.
Biden briefed Americans about the potential bomb cyclone. This type of cyclone forms when atmospheric pressure drops very quickly. In a strong storm, bomb cyclones are named so due to their explosive power, which is caused by the rapid fall in pressure. They bring along an array of weather phenomenon, ranging from blizzards to severe thunderstorms to heavy precipitation. Forecasters expect the storm to morph into a bomb cyclone near the Great Lakes. At least 5 American states, including Kentucky, Missouri, Oklahoma, Georgia, and North Carolina, have implemented emergency plans. Others are likely to follow. The alerts in the country stretch from coast to coast and reach as far south as the US-Mexico border and the Sunshine State of Florida. The storm is expected to bring record-breaking cold and life-threatening wind chills over the Great Plains. Blizzards could sweep through the northern plains to the Great Lakes. Significant freezing rain has been forecasted across parts of western states of Oregon and Washington. The storm could dump up to a foot of snow on the upper Midwest areas. It is also expected to cause widespread power outages in the area. The National Weather Service in New York has labeled the storm a once-in-a-generation winter weather event.
Now, for almost 2 years during the pandemic, most of us were locked up in our homes, away from family and friends. We've all battled through tough times and celebrated the good times, alone. There were moments when we longed to be with our loved ones. Not being able to see our parents when they're sick, it left millions of us tormented. Many across the world could not even bid goodbye to their loved ones that they lost to the Wuhan virus. Smiles went virtual, hugs went virtual, and even tears went virtual. Thankfully, 2022 has been a relief for many as the dark days of COVID-19 faded away. Festivals in several countries returned to their full fervour this year. But will Christmas for the United Kingdom this year be pandemic-like again? In the latest, Britons have been told to avoid the elderly if they have a cough or a cold, which means many could possibly spend another Christmas away from their parents and grandparents. The message from the authorities is this: if you feel unwell, stay at home. This year, people across the United Kingdom prepared for their least restricted Christmas, since COVID curbs force families to stay apart. For many, this stay-at-home advice brings back the haunting memories of lockdown. An advisory to wear masks in enclosed spaces is also back. The NHS, the National Health Service, is under immense pressure, with the number of people in hospitals rising by 2/3 in a week. And according to data, an average of 1,939 people with flu were in hospital each day last week, up 67% from the previous week. An average of 149 critical care hospital beds were occupied by flu patients in the week ending 18th December, up 72% on the previous week. Let's talk about cases of scarlet fever now. It is an infection linked to strep A. They are twice as high as expected. It has already infected more than 30,000 Britons. The virus is mainly caused due to a bacteria, and it triggers flu-like symptoms like high temperature and a sore throat. Difficulties in dealing with the virus have been aggravated by nurses, paramedics and other health workers announcing walkouts over wages. They say they are underpaid and overworked. They want a wage hike on par with inflation. October saw UK inflation climb to a 41-year high of 11.1%. Its citizens are already battling a worsening cost of living crisis. Energy bills are rising, grocery bills are rising, fuel prices are up. People have been forced to rein in their spending this festive season. And how is the British government led by Rishi Sunak dealing with all of this? It says it has made up its mind it will not back down against the striking workers. There is no sign of a breakthrough between the striking workers and the government. Sunak says the best way to help workers would be to reduce inflation as quickly as possible. Health workers, however, are not convinced. The strikes will spill over to the next year as well. Nurses and ambulance workers announce further disruptions. It's a nightmare on the streets. But the UK government does not want to be blamed, neither for the rising costs, nor for the ongoing strikes, and definitely not for increasing hospitalizations. They want the onus to be on you, on the people. So they've advised families to stay apart in the holidays. It's true that each one of us is responsible for our safety and that of our loved ones. I'm not debating that. All of the learnings from the pandemic, one that is crucial is that we need to keep ourselves safe to ensure that others around us are safe. Maintaining social distancing, washing and sanitizing hands regularly, wearing a mask in case of symptoms, all this is a part of our lifestyle right now. Citizens continue to do the bit. But are governments doing enough? Have they completely passed on the onus on their citizens? The simplest solution is to lock them down. In the UK, the Sunak government has ruled out any compromise with striking health workers. The medical infrastructure is only likely to further be burdened. It's crumbling. All this amid an increasing fear of the Wuhan virus. So it asks you to stay away from the loved ones, from all your family members, especially during the holidays. It asks you to maintain distance, to spend the holidays alone, A cop-out by the Rishi Sunak government, isn't it? The Christmas Grinch is back. That's me. I'll have to call myself that this week. On recent shows, I've spoken about buying toys on a whim for your kids and how that could be dangerous for them if you don't read the manual. I've spoken about Americans running away from their families during holiday season because they just can't tolerate them. I've spoken about holiday anxiety, which is spiking this year, and of course I've told you that the Wuhan virus is back. So if you're looking for some Christmas cheer ahead of the weekend, sure, there's plenty of that to go around. But on this show, we like to talk about real issues, things that you're thinking about but may be afraid to voice out loud. Feelings which may be bubbling under the surface but are too politically incorrect to speak out in the holiday season. But looking away is not an option. It's the Friday before Christmas, and here I was thinking of a white Christmas. Candy canes, Christmas stockings, parents regaling their kids with stories of Santa coming down the chimney. Couple celebrating a romantic night in, dressed in matching pajamas, posting on Instagram about how blessed they are. And then I saw this headline. It comes from the UK. Divorce rates in the United Kingdom are set to hit a 50-year high. Why? Because the British are unhappy. In fact, their unhappiness is set to hit its highest level next year. I repeat, this is the most unhappy the British have ever been, ever since records even began. So what gives? Why are Britons so unhappy? Well, there are a host of reasons. I just mentioned some of them. You heard about the UK season of strikes, right? A complete collapse of essential services in the UK. And right in the middle of flu season, a COVID comeback, and of course, winter illnesses. So there's the stress of that. And take a look at this now. Moreover, Britons, like the rest of the world, are contending with skyrocketing inflation. They're unhappy because the cost of happiness has gone up. Living standards have taken a dive. Romantic night outs are expensive. PwC or PricewaterhouseCoopers says that real wages in Britain will return to levels last seen in 2006. Other reports say that a weekly shop will cost £100 for the very first time. House prices are falling. France will overtake the UK in real wages. Naturally, there's plenty of bitterness going around, even amid the over-the-top festive cheer. And so, this holiday season, you're likely to see more fights, more passive-aggressive taunts, more gaslighting, as couples deal with issues that they haven't dealt with in quite some time. This Christmas, you're not likely to see lovebirds cozying up before a bonfire. It's more likely that you'll find them looking for distractions, bickering, cancelling big gatherings and choosing to give each other the silent treatment. Like I said, I'm the Christmas Grinch. The government has also made it easier for people to part ways, to call it quits. The introduction of the so-called no-fault divorce in April in the UK. It is expected to lead to a rise in divorces by 140,000 next year. This is the biggest jump since 1971. So you see, stress caused by the cost of living crisis, along with the demands of the festive period, are all going to push more couples over the edge. You think I'm exaggerating? Did you know the first working Monday in January is dubbed Divorce Day? So you celebrate Christmas, you go out for New Year's, you party hard, and then sign the papers in the new year. This is mostly because what has weakened your marriage over the year bubbles up and tips over in the holidays. As if a divorce day isn't enough to celebrate Splitsville, there's a good divorce week in the UK too. It aims to raise awareness about improvements in family law to settle a lover's spat outside the court. A discussion at the kitchen table rather than a war of words and egos at the lawyers. But whatever you may call it, it's not something to be cheerful about. After all, is there such a thing as a good divorce? You tell me. Believe you me, this is not just a problem with the United Kingdom. According to a report from the UN, global divorce rates are up. In fact, more people are calling off a relationship in developed nations than in the developing world. And you have to listen to this. Ironically, the highest divorce rate in the world is in the Maldives. Do you see the irony here? Yes. You're not the only one laughing. It is the honeymoon capital of the world. So it seems that while couples may be heading to the Maldives to celebrate their love, for those living in the Maldives, the scenic views are not enough of a temptation to honor their own vows. 'Tis the season, they say, to make merry, to break bread with family and friends, cozy up in front of the fireplace. All I want for Christmas is you, hums Mariah Carey every year. It's music to some ears, screeching nails on the board for others. Because 'tis also the season to fight with your spouse. There are squabbles over money, over family issues. You argue over how much to spend over gifts. Remember I told you about giftflation. Arguments over wearing matching pajamas, for God's sake. So come January, more and more people knock on the lawyer's door. They're headed for Splitsville. It makes you question the very institution of marriage. There's no husband or wife anymore. There are partners. Forget about romance. Everything is very transactional. We spend money on matching outfits on Instagram and fight over budgets in bedrooms. We go all out during the holidays, celebrate romance and togetherness, and call it quits in the new year. So I'll just say this. If you're sparring with your partner this holiday season, trust me, you're not alone. But I'm not going to end the show with that. Let's focus on something more cheerful. It is the Friday before Christmas after all, and I'm going to leave you with these visuals of Santas delivering gifts and preparations of the festive season all around. Take a look.
Again, because like have a lot of things come to school, it look like surprise and it look nice and cute.
Loti.
Merry Christmas from Jerusalem in the Holy Land!
Yo creo que ya se lo contaron, ¿eh?
¡Ole! ¡Ole! Me gustan las patas, se van la rodilla, meten la panza, saquen el pecho. ¡Que tú no!
Un buen susto. Qué bien, qué diablota. Me da risa tu ciudad.
WION, now available.
बचपन जिंदगी में सिर्फ एक बार आता है, उसे खुल के जीने दो, दाग लगने दो, दीवारों पर लगाए ना बर्जर इजी क्लीन पेंट, नो दाग नो धब्बा, ओनली ब्यूटीफुल वॉल्स। जो मैला ना हो रंगों में, वो क्या बचपन है, जो झूमे ना उमंगों में, वो क्या बचपन है। बचपन जिंदगी में सिर्फ एक बार आता है, उसे खुल के जीने दो, दाग लगने दो, दीवारों पर लगाए ना बर्जर इजी क्लीन पेंट, इसके क्रॉस लिंकिंग पॉलीमर से नो दाग नो धब्बा, ओनली ब्यूटीफुल वॉल्स।
WION Health Resort is unique, the only one of its kind. Experience the 4 paths of natural wellness: yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy. Each uniquely customized program improves the whole person to make every person whole. Come to WION Health Resort. Make your reservation at yowon.com.
It's code red for humanity. The alarm bells are deafening. Wildfires, floods, and hurricanes. Extreme climate events warn of impending doom. Is the world heading towards a climate catastrophe? Watch WION's Climate Tracker weekdays at 12 p.m. GMT, 5:30 p.m. IST.
You don't know how to fix the holes in our ozone layer. You don't know how to bring the salmon back up a dead stream. You don't know how to bring back an animal now extinct. And you can't bring back the forest that once grew where there is now a desert.
You have ignored us in the past and you will ignore us again. We have run out of excuses and we are running out of time.
Show us your faithfulness. Show us your trustworthiness. Show us your honesty. Prove us wrong. We desperately need you to prove us wrong. God help us all if you fail to prove us wrong. God help us.
$1 trillion species. 7.8 billion humans. 1.9 million species extinct. One planet. Where are we heading? What should we do? Watch Climate Tracker, only on WION. World is one.
From the world's most volatile region, conflicts over faith and boundaries. Stories of death, destruction, despair, and hope. WION brings you to the